Also in that interview with the New York Times, the president was asked if he would order the Justice Department to reopen the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. Here's how the president responded, quote, "I have the absolute right to do what I want to do with the Justice Department, but for purposes of hopefully thinking I'm going to be treated fairly, I've stayed uninvolved with this particular matter." Our legal analyst, Paul Callan, is here. Let's tick through this. So, Paul, he says he has the absolute right to do whatever he wants with the Justice Department. True?
True and false. He is the person in charge of the Justice Department. So, for instance, he could order them to divert resources from one investigation to another or to terminate an investigation. He can do that. However, if the purpose of terminating the investigation is to protect himself or to punish an enemy, that could be viewed as an abuse of power and or an obstruction of justice. So, as I say, it's yes and no, because if he's giving a legitimate order, it has to be followed, but you can also commit an act of criminality in that context.
He also, in the context of the Attorney General and the Justice Department, spoke about loyalty and his disappointment with his own Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, for recusing himself from the Russia investigation. And then he went on to compare the relationship between he and Sessions to President Obama and former Attorney General Eric Holder. And he said, Holder protected President Obama, totally protected him. When you look at things that they did, Holder protected the president, and I have great respect for that. I'll be honest. Objectively speaking, is it the role of an attorney general to protect a president?
It's really a strange answer for him to give because he's continuing his attack on Jeff Sessions. I thought he was going to ease up on that, but really what he's saying is Obama had a great attorney general who was loyal to him, but mine has not been. And frankly, it's very, very unusual to see a president attacking his own attorney general in a continuing way like this. But you know, Poppy, this entire interview was so strange. The other thing that I thought was really bizarre was him now praising the fairness of Mueller. And as a former prosecutor, it reminds me of the use of the good guy, bad guy routine. Remember, Trump's people have been attacking Mueller relentlessly for conducting an unfair investigation. And now the president is saying, well, it's a fair investigation. It's sort of, he's acting like, you know, the good guy, and his spokespeople are acting like the bad guy in a criminal interrogation.
Yeah. For now. He
For
says
now.
that
Yes.
he thinks Mueller is being fair. He's called this a witch hunt so many times before. Paul Callan, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
With me now, CNN political commentator Simone Sanders and Alice Stewart. And Alice, let me begin with you. I mean, just on Paul Callan's comments, I mean, what do you make of the fact that the president said, look, I think Mueller is going to be fair on this? In an investigation, he is deemed a witch hunt so many times.
I think he should repeat that one line over and over and over and over again and put a big period at the end of that sentence and say nothing else about the Russia investigation. Probably, let me just say from a communications standpoint, anytime you have any elected official meeting with any reporter without any press team present for 30 minutes, it makes my heart beat really fast, and I have shell shocks thinking about what could possibly have come out of this. But look, I think he was right to say that he thinks he'll be treated fair by Mueller. I think reiterating that there is no collusion 16 times may help convince some of the base, but that's not going to change the outcome of this investigation. But I think overall, I think it was important for him to get out, say at least one positive comment about Mueller, despite the fact that many others in the GOP are being critical of the investigation. And I think given what could have happened, I think this was a really nice outcome given the potential of something like this.
He also said 16 separate times in this half an hour sit down with the New York Times that there was no collusion. Look, that's part of what's being investigated. Simone, one thing that stood out to me, you know, for you as a Democrat who worked with Bernie Sanders, he said virtually every Democrat has said there is no collusion. What did you think when you read that?
I mean, I think Donald Trump is reaching here. Look, I think that there is there's a few questions to answer with the Russia investigation. The Russia investigation, from questions that you've asked Trump supporters and other people out there, that you know is not necessarily an electoral issue just yet. Folks are not going to the ballot box voting on Donald Trump and Russia. But I think some of the questions that this investigation will answer is yes, was there collusion? Were there attempts to collude? Was there obstruction of justice? And those answers have not been concluded just yet. So it's incorrect, actually, for the president to note that has been an outcome of this investigation.
So many things to go through here. I do find it interesting, Alice. You know, another part of what the president said on the Russia investigation is timing-wise. He doesn't know when Mueller's probe will wrap up, and he didn't seem to feel any urgency in it getting done. He did say it's bad for America that it's going on, but the White House counsel has said, we think this is going to wrap up at the end of the year. Now they're pushing it to right after the new year. It seems like he's on a very different page than his own White House counsel on this. Does that matter?
I think we're going to always have conflicting desires for when this will wrap up. Clearly, in my view, I think his counsel is telling him things will wrap up quickly just to satisfy the president. He wants it to. I think it's in the country's best interest if it wraps up quickly. But at the same time, I think they just need to stop talking about it. They need to quit trying to anticipate the outcome and anticipate the timing of this. Let Robert Mueller do his job. And if the administration is accurate and that they have done nothing wrong, then let the facts play out. Let it lead to its conclusion. I think it's important not to prejudge the outcome of this, but I think he should do, as he's done the last month or so, focus on meaningful legislation, meaningful, more issues like tax reform, now infrastructure, and let's just put the Russia investigation on the back burner right now and let Mueller do his job.
So he did. We'll see if he doesn't talk about the Russia investigation. I'm not so sure about that. But Simone, he did talk a great deal in this interview about bipartisanship and working with Democrats. Here's part of what he said. Dems should come to me on infrastructure. They should come to me on DACA. We're trying to do something about it. They should definitely come to me on health care because we can do bipartisan on health care. We can do bipartisan on infrastructure. We can do bipartisan on DACA. You know, 12 hours after this interview, he just tweeted this morning and said, no DACA deal without a wall. I mean, is this genuine hope for bipartisanship?
So I do think the president genuinely hopes that that Democrats would come to him to strike a deal. I want him to know that no one's coming begging and groveling to Donald Trump, asking him to do something. He's confused. The Republicans are in charge of both chambers of Congress, so the House of Representatives and the Senate. The reason that nothing has gotten done up until tax reform has been because Republicans couldn't get their stuff together, not because Democrats were, quote unquote, obstructing. Democrats are more than happy to work with this administration and their Republican colleagues on the Hill. The problem is they say things like we want bipartisanship, and then they say, well, we want to overhaul and get rid of Obamacare. Well, that's not happening, and no Democrat is coming to the table to do that. They say things like we want to save the dreamers, and then Donald Trump tweets things such as he tweeted this morning about a border wall. Democrats are not going to vote for a border wall in conjunction with saving dreamers, DACA recipients, who this is the only country they know. So I think the president needs to kind of retool his negotiating skills here. But Democrats are more than willing to come to the table. But be clear, Republicans don't have their caucus together, and that's why nothing is getting done.
Is that a correct or... I mean, Alice, just when you think about the calculation the president's making here, he's saying no DACA deal without a wall. I mean, you do have, I think it's 83% of Americans polled want to see a solution for dreamers here. So, you know, it's more than just his base.
Sure, and I think just one clarification. I think we started out this year, yes, the GOP was all over the map and they didn't work together. I think they have learned they have to get something done. The GOP now is united with working together, especially with House and Senate members are working together. That's why we have tax reform. And it is critical with a lot of these issues moving forward, whether it's infrastructure or DACA, that they do work more closely with Democrats. And DACA is an important issue, but the president has made it quite clear anything that has any remote connection to national security with regard to immigration, he wants to build the wall. And if he has to tie that in with DACA, he's going to do that. And I also think if we're talking about DACA, he's also going to be talking about putting an end to chain migration, which is a key priority for this administration. So I think everyone's going to have to be willing to concede and work together. If you want DACA, you also have to consider the wall and chain migration.
But Poppy, there's something important to be said here in the fact that like the dreamers and the issues of immigration, phrases like chain migration negate the fact that these are real people and real families that we're talking about. These are real young people who have been in this country, who have paid their taxes, and the administration is not approaching immigration from a humane perspective. And so Democrats are not voting for a border wall. They're not voting for, quote unquote, ending chain migration. And that rhetoric is going to tank this deal, and it's going to have Donald Trump signing an executive order on DACA. Watch.
we'll be watching. Really quickly, though, I did want to get you on this, Alice, and that is the president coming out and mocking climate change and equating it to weather, which is two very different things, climate and weather, last night, talking about the extreme cold in this tweet, saying in the East it could be the coldest New Year's on record. Perhaps we could use a little bit of that good old global warming that our country, but not other countries, was going to pay trillions of dollars to protect against. Bundle up. Either he doesn't understand that there's a difference between weather and climate, or he doesn't care. But also, it seems like he's making it very clear that he's not a believer in climate change, which we were trying to get clarity from him on and the White House on for a really long time.
I think he's been very clear that with regard to climate change, that he does think it's a hoax. He thinks it's a very expensive tax that has been implied on many people. But the big question that is really difficult to get a firm response is whether or not it is man-made, and that is something that we're still trying to get from. But I think with regard to global warming and climate change, I think he made his position very clear by pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord and making sure that we do what's in the best interest of Americans, and I think we're going to continue to see that. He clearly doesn't believe in global warming. He thinks climate change is a hoax, and we're certainly not going to get any change of him on that. He's been quite clear on where he stands.
And he's wrong.
Alice, Simone, appreciate it.